Are you heading into mediation because you've been told that you have to, or because your ex has invited you? Do you want to go to mediation but you feel unsure about the process or where to even start? Did you know you actually get a say in who the mediator is? Maybe you're trying to choose a mediator right now and worrying about making the wrong choice, or your ex has already chosen one and your instincts are telling you that something doesn't feel right. If that sounds like you, then this episode will be perfect for you. Today, we're breaking down how to choose the right mediator, the red flags to watch out for, and what to do if your ex is trying to control the process. We'll also be covering the difference between free and private mediation, how much it costs, what qualifications mediators should have, and whether it actually matters or not if they're a lawyer. Because choosing the right mediator can make a huge difference to how your mediation and your outcome unfolds. Welcome, Mum.
Hey, Laura. Hello, everyone.
So, Mum, today we're going to be talking about mediation, but before we get started, just a reminder to everybody, Mum is not your lawyer. I am not a lawyer. We're just talking about mediators today. Every situation is different, so always get your own legal advice. But it is important to note that Mum is a qualified mediator. So Mum's done a fair few mediations in her time. So, what she has to say on the topic is valid and good, so don't worry. So let's get to the jingle and let's get started. Hello, I'm Laura, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom. All right, so Mum, we're going to be talking about how to choose a mediator, the red flags and the risks, what to do if your ex is controlling, the difference between free and private mediation, whether you need to be looking for something different if it's property or children's matters, the costs, the steps you need to take, and, the legal knowledge that a mediator may need. So let's go through it all. But before we start, Mum, can it make or break a
mediation?
A mediation.
The choice of mediator? Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mediators sometimes brag about what percentage of resolution they get in their cases, which I think is not a very valid thing to do because it makes the mediation all about the mediator rather than about the parties. But yeah, I think it really helps. It really helps. And a good quality mediator, properly trained, will be able to at least guide the parties to a better understanding of what the actual issues are.
Before we get into the red flags for mediators, then let's talk about how to choose a mediator. How do you choose a mediator for your clients?
Well, okay, when I was practicing, we had a stable of about 4 or 5 mediators that we thought were good, that spoke to the clients respectfully, were able to tease out the issues, and ultimately we'd, get a successful mediation more often than not. So, and that was just through experience in the field.
All right. So some lawyers out there will just have a list of ones that they like working with, that they know are good, that seem to do the job well. So that's through tried and tested. So if you come across a mediator that you don't like, did you have a blacklist?
No. We may have had a Bob list.
A Bob list.
Bottom of the barrel.
Okay. All right. So through experience, you figured out who were the good ones and who were the bad ones, which makes that really hard then for people who aren't lawyers to figure out which one's a good one and which one's not a good one. Can you speak to the mediator before you choose them?
It's best to not, okay, because if that mediator is going to be neutral with both of you, then it needs to be, the initial contact should be in writing, like email if you can. Or with their secretary or staff member, just so there's no allegation that you've kind of got to them first and told your story and poisoned the well, so to speak.
So if you can't speak to them before, I guess what you've got to just do some research.
Yep. I look for Google reviews. Okay. And yes, someone was going to take a mediator recently, and it turned out that that mediator had been a member of a quite active group. Yeah, and so that didn't suit our client at all. I reckon, and you know how I found out? I typed the name in and put review after it because I hadn't heard of this person before.
Right.
And then you see the reviews and you'll see who's raving about how good this one is or how bad they are. And you'll soon get a bit of a taste. I think a good mediator should have no reviews either way.
Right.
Not sort of too much leaning towards perhaps the applicants, the fathers, mothers, or not leaning too far away. I mean, if they've got an agenda to push, then it does trammel their mediation skills, I guess, because it's the parties that have to reach agreement.
Mm-hmm. All right. So hopefully if there's people writing really bad reviews about a mediator, that's not a good sign. But if people are writing really good reviews about a mediator, also might not be a good sign because it might not mean it was particularly even-keeled.
Well, that's right. And if you write a really bad review of a mediator, that could be just a sign that they didn't agree with you.
That's right.
So it's tricky. So if you've got lawyers, you can ask them what mediators there are. And cost, I think, factors in.
Yeah, but if you don't have a lawyer, what kind of qualifications then should they be looking for in a mediator?
Okay, so it's different for children and property because children's such a sensitive area. I think about 14 years ago, the court introduced a list of accredited family dispute resolution providers, or that snappy little title, the FDRP, or practitioners, I guess the best. And those people are on the Attorney General's website and you will see them. And sometimes you just you can put your postcode in there and it will show you which ones are in your area. You can even filter it down by who's an accredited family law specialist or things like that. And then you should there's no reviews there, but by being registered there and on the website, it means they're current and still able to be a mediator for children's matters. So that's the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second one is where it gets a bit controversial because technically anyone can mediate a property matter technically, okay? And so as long as they've had like the basic minimum training as a mediator, no special like leaning towards property or anything, or even if they're FDRPs and haven't done property before, they can still take on work for property.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you before you go to the next bit. I think you're going to say. So the question then is, does your mediator need to be a lawyer?
I say no in respect of children, family dispute resolution provider. In fact, there may be an argument to never have a lawyer trying to mediate that because it's such a sensitive area and sometimes lawyers, me included, I guess, can be a bit too direct. As for property, I think it does matter that you are qualified as a lawyer or a barrister or a former judge. And I know it's not a requirement of the law, but if it were me, I'd be looking for a lawyer who has family dispute resolution providers qualifications if I wanted to do it all together. Or what a lot of people do is they separate the two issues and they go to a family dispute resolution provider, maybe a cheaper option, and then they have a different sort of set of people to do the property with them.
Right. So if you're doing children's, then you do have to have the FDRP. So that's on the Attorney General's website. If you're doing property separately, you don't need an FDRP. But Mum thinks it is sometimes a good idea to have someone who's got some knowledge of property law.
Yeah. You know, Laura, like you used to do mediations as well at school.
Yeah.
And I've been mediating since 1994 off and on, right? And sometimes you might have an amazing sort of domino effect of everything in property got sorted. And when you're on that role, they teach this in mediation. When the parties have begun to agree, it is like dominoes falling down. So then they might want to talk about the children and in a spirit of goodwill, get the whole thing done and leave. You're stuck if you don't have an FDRP who at that point. That's why I say dual qualifications or separate them out.
Right.
Talking with lawyers is their dear.
Well, and we'll talk about costs later, but I think it's really important that you've mentioned that. I'm going to point that out again. no offense to lawyers, but when it comes to kids stuff, it's not legal per se. It's emotional. It's the children's developmental health. It's all of the things that involved to sometimes having a social worker or a psychologist mediator or someone who's got that kind of background for children's matters can be really helpful in that instance because they get it a bit more. But like you said, Mum, sometimes lawyers are just a bit blunt and they don't get it. So there's some things to think about there. Don't worry, we're going to talk about a lot more about the lawyers and judge mediators later on, and free and private. So my other question, Mum, is if there's family violence involved, what kind of mediators should people be choosing?
I think if there's family violence, I think they should choose someone who's not afraid to do the mediation because they have an option, particularly in children's matters. They have a certificate they have to give, a 60I. And if there's family violence, they can just say, this isn't suitable for mediation. And we've talked about how that works. So
you've got to choose someone who's brave enough to do the mediation.
Mm-hmm. And many of them will. Many of them will not. If you find someone who's prepared to mediate in a family violence situation, then you'll be looking for someone who can do it by cyberlink, by video maybe, or make sure you've got separate rooms, make sure there's exits where you can go and come safely. So they know their skills, they know their environment. So, just ask them or email and ask what provisions there are for family violence. Because remember, when you go to mediation, in most cases, the family violence is still in the allegation stage. You really haven't had anyone usually make a finding that there was family violence. So it's really important because this is an issue that's I want to take on and I want to take to the Australian government. And if any of you are listening, and I know Cara Cook, you've been on this podcast before and you're now an MP in Canberra, I think it's really important that there's a gap at the moment for people going through domestic violence who desperately need to do mediation. They desperately don't want to go to court, but they can't find a mediator willing to do a mediation that could potentially solve the issue and not have to go to court, but they're opting out not to do the mediation because of the family violence. And then these poor people are getting stuck having to go to court and maybe not being able to afford it. And then so the whole thing just sits in a big soup of mess for a lot longer. So I think the government should act on that and have some alternative arrangements for mediators for family violence survivor victims. So we're going to be working on that and pushing that. Let us know. It's in the comments or send us an email if you've got any solutions that you can think of. But let's get on to, I'm just going to ask this question right at the start, but can you request a different mediator if you feel uncomfortable during the mediation? We'll have to abandon the mediation and start another one with a new intake process and so forth. There are lots of cases in mediation where someone just up and walks out, in the first 30 minutes. I feel offended and they're gone and it's a waste for people.
Yeah.
But people do that. Yeah.
But there's no mediator waiting in the wings to take over.
No. See, your mediator, by the time you get there, they will have familiarised themselves with the basics of the case. And if you're halfway through, there's already invisible work, I guess, being done between you both. And so if you find yourself halfway through a mediation and you don't like the mediator, as long as it's not costing you too much money, like you might send your lawyer home back if you've got a but as long as it's not costing you too much money, it's better probably to just try and work with this person so that no one can say that you didn't use your best intentions to mediate it, the dispute.
So that's when you're in the mediation. It's basically, it's too late. But let's talk about the red flags and risks to watch out for if anyone is trying to choose a mediator right now. And you have seen mediations fail, Mum, because they've chosen the wrong mediator. Are there dodgy mediators that people should watch out for? I know you said you had a bottom of the barrel list, but are there actually, like car salesmen, there's less dodgy, and then there's just really dodgy that everyone knows, don't buy from him.
With apologies to the entire car salesman industry and car sales women too.
Yeah, yes. But what about, is there such a thing as dodgy mediators, or is that just a myth?
there are some mediators who have hopped on particular bandwagons, and that might make them less suitable for your mediation than you would want. And tip here, if you find a mediator who is very pro-mum, right? You go to mediation and you're the mum, right? Then the other side is not going to cooperate properly because this person isn't neutral. So really the mediator should be kind of the invisible silk thread between you both, or like a communications line that just gets between you both. And their skill is in identifying the issues in dispute, identifying what their interests are, why is he saying that? Why is she saying that? And then coming to a conclusion. So yes, I think those Google reviews will show you quickly if one is too one way or to the other.
Let's just put it out there, Mum. You're saying the bandwagon is some mediators have been aligned with women's rights groups and some mediators have been aligned with men's rights groups. So you've seen that. Have you seen any other mediators that are aligned with law firms and that there's somehow some sort of extra help for the other side if they're aligned to a law firm?
I think that law firms should avoid any suggestion that they're in cahoots with the mediator. And I do remember one time for a client, the mediator was selected by the other person and the office was right next door to their lawyer's office. So, you can bet there's coffees and teas. I mean, we do all know each other in the profession, but what they've got to avoid and what they didn't in this case was they've got to avoid the perception of bias, right? So I just wrote and said, no, not that one. It's, near your office. We prefer someone else. And then I sent them a panel of 3 to choose one from.
Okay. So if you think your ex has got this mediator in their pocket, maybe you've seen them go out to coffee, or maybe you've heard them having chats and they all seem super chummy and you haven't started your mediation yet, is it reasonable to say, I really don't want to mediate with this person? I don't feel like it's going to be an unbiased mediation. Can we please choose some other ones?
I think you've got to be very careful about kind of slandering a mediation. Mediators, right? So they're all experienced in their own field. And I think there are people who may have very strong points of view one way or another are a very small minority of them. But yes, so what you would say if you're writing a letter to the other side, they've sent you this mediator, you've looked them up and you're going, whoa, no, not getting involved in this. In one, I read their submission to the Australian Law Reform Committee, and it was clear they were pro one side or other of the parents. What you need to say is, dear such and such, I looked up that mediator. I don't think they are a good fit for us. You can't get in trouble for that. They're not a good fit for us. Instead, here are 3 mediators that I've chosen. Would you please select one of these and we'll go forward?
Okay. And so that is the way that you can get the process and practical steps. And we're going to get to that at the end of the episode to take you through what to do. But yes, that is how you start. So what if your ex is controlling the process and they send you a letter and say, we've chosen this mediator, but it's like $1 million, and you can't afford it? Do you, if your ex has chosen the mediator, do you have to pay?
It depends on the financial means of the parties. But I think the real question here is, if they've proposed a mediator who you think is more aligned with their views than being open, why would you pay for someone who's going to give you, you feel, a bit of a bum steer? Mediation arguments where someone's chosen, like Relationships Australia or CentreCare, or one of the more free or lower cost, which makes obvious sense. If there's an expensive one and your ex says you've got to pay half and you say, I can't, be very careful that they don't pay the lot, because they really want that particular mediator. So I think in your letter, you would say something like, that's not a good fit and we can't afford them. Here's 3 free mediators. Choose one of these. All
right. So there are cost options then if money is a barrier. And Mum's just talked about some of them there. She said There's the Relationships Australia. There's Interrelate, I believe.
Yes.
There's CentreCare.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of free mediation services available. And sometimes I think it's maybe a good idea to give the free one a go first and see how that goes because, how much does it cost sometimes, Mum, what is the cost?
Oh, thousands, like $5,000-$6,000 for the mediator. And
Yeah.
then if you've got that, you might be expected to take your lawyer along. If your ex is prepared to pay that much money, they may turn up with a barrister or a solicitor. So it gets, and you're sort of, it's just too dear. It's a champagne service on a beer budget.
Yeah. And if you're really not sure if your ex is a manipulative, controlling or high conflict and you're like, mediation just 100% isn't going to work. Mum has said a million times, so many people think that, and then they're surprised when it does. But does it matter if you're paying more for a mediator? Like you said, Mum, it's the same service. It's just you get like first class. You get a better room with better seats and better aircon.
Better coffee.
And so I really do think sometimes it's better to just try one of the free services first, test it out, give it a go, see how you go. And then if you think, no, we need someone with a more legal brain to put their head behind this to figure out a solution and help us get to a solution, then try the expensive one. But don't get railroaded into paying when you're struggling with money to paying for some ridiculously expensive mediator when you can't afford it.
Yep. And sometimes the other side will say, well, we'll pay for it and you pay us back at the end of the trial. So you're still really paying for it. I think I need to add a little note here about the free or low cost or community-based mediators, particularly in children's matters. These people are amazing, but there's such a long waiting list. So sometimes if time is crucial, then you may have to start looking for private mediators. And it may be that you choose your panel of 3 by ringing up their office, finding out what their availability is and their costs, right?
Yep.
And then you've got that down. You're not like having in-depth chats with the mediator, and then you can send the name, the dates available and the cost in a letter. Now, I should caution here that there doesn't seem to be anything in the legislation about putting up 3 mediators and the other person choosing one. But that is the process by which we choose single experts like a family report writer or a valuer or a real estate agent, right? And so it's a natural extension to go on to choosing mediators in that way. So, yeah.
So
I'd like to see the law changed on that to make it that you have to have 3.
So you've always suggested it, Mum. It's better to just say, here's 3 I've chosen.
Mm-hmm.
You choose one, and then that way no one's can think it's a biased decision. No one thinks you can be buddies with them. So it's just a better way of doing it. But like Mum said, that's not it's not law that you have to do it that way.
Yeah.
Now, and if you're doing free mediation, you don't get to choose your mediator. They'll just appoint you one. So that part is removed from the process.
Yes.
But you could still choose 3. We could use Family Relationships Australia, Interrelate or CentreCare. So you can still do the choose 3 in that process if you wanted. But as Mum said, the wait list can be very long. A really good idea, if you're listening today, you're thinking about mediation, but you don't know what step to take first, the one step you should take from this episode today is to just go and ring up and ask what their wait lists are like. So you've got in the back of your mind, you know what it's going to be. We've talked about how much a mediator usually costs. If you're serious, should you be paying more? You're invited to our free webinar. Whether you're stuck at the beginning of deciding to divorce or you're struggling to find your way through the legal jargon and fear of the unknown of the legal process, we are here to empower you to take control. Join us to learn what steps you can take, followed by a live Q&A where you get Lynn, my amazing mum, and family law accredited specialist to answer your questions. All you have to do is go to www.thedivorcecourse.com.au and click on Reserve My Seat. We'll see you there. Hurry, spaces are limited, so don't miss out. Register today. We've talked about how much a mediator usually costs. If you're serious, should you be paying more?
Well, there's a moral thing there, Laura. If you can afford an expensive mediator and the only impediment is wondering, as a serious enough case to have a highly paid mediator, then I would like to see a person in that situation taking up time with the free mediation services.
True.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Are there any, so we've talked about maybe some of the pros and cons of free versus private. And I do think, like we've said, the free ones tend to be social workers and they have a really good handle on children's mediations.
They do.
Some of the downside of the free ones, though, if they're not lawyers, they don't understand the law as much. And I have heard of mediators trying to push things that might not necessarily fly if you ever went to court. Have you seen or heard about that, Mum?
In children's matters, I think they're amazing.
Yeah.
I've seen such wonderful parenting plans. They're beautiful for parenting plans. And it usually starts off, we both agree that little Jimmy is the most important thing in this, and that we both agree will be respect. All of that, which is not, of course, parenting plans aren't enforceable in court. So it's those kind of gentle statements. And if you're that sort of person and your ex is that sort of person, this may be perfect for you. Because the social workers, to be fair, they have a lot of experience in children's matters and putting forward a child's point of view or their development. So, yes, I think, I know they do some sort of airy-fairy parenting plans. But I was on the board. I was on the board for Relationships Australia in Queensland here for a little while in one of the areas. And I would go to the meetings and I think, we didn't decide anything. Like they all talked for ages. And I'm like, but what was the point?
So I think
it's how they do things. Yeah.
But it's good because, when you give birth to a child, you go to those birthing lessons, you go to those, those parenting circles and you learn how to give birth and you learn about looking after a baby, and all of that stuff is quite, gentle, and there's no hard or fast rules with how you look after a baby or whether you wake it up at a certain time or all of the things like that. But when it comes to getting divorced and co-parenting, there needs to be some gentle, subtle reminding that these are your children, these kids, you guys need to snap out of it and not be fighting if you can, unless you've got a person that is impossible to be co-parenting with. But so it has really good effects. They've got courses you can do as well that kind of give you an understanding of what the kids are going through. So look, I think it's fantastic. I hands down think for parenting, it's a great idea.
Yes.
I think when it comes to private mediation, Mum, if you're so one of the things people might not realize is some of the private mediators are ex-judges or ex-KCs or QCs or ex-barristers.
Former barristers, yes.
Are there any pros and cons when it comes to going to an expensive mediation like that, apart from the fact they're expensive?
So when I would choose a mediator for a matter, right, a lawyer will know most of the mediators in the area. And I had one who was a former judge, whose name I will not reveal even under torture. I knew that they were very strong and didn't put up with any nonsense. And so if I had a person on the other side who needed a strong hand, that person, that judge, former judge, would be top of my list. Okay. And then, so it's just their personalities. But it's horses for courses. What do you need? If you've got two people who genuinely tried to settle and there's just this last little bit, then they might need someone with a softer touch.
So really, maybe if you've got a lawyer friend, or you could, if you're doing step in, step out with a lawyer, you could ask them, can you recommend a mediator? So really, does a mediator, if they're a lawyer or a judge, ex-judge, can they kind of give you more subtle hints about things when it comes to stuff of what would fly in court and what wouldn't fly in court?
Yes. Or perhaps not so subtle sometimes. So there's two sorts of mediation. And one is that gentle one where the person fades into the background, the mediator, and the other part, the two of them work it out in a completely neutral way, right? I discovered that's not my type of mediation. I tried it and it nearly killed me. So it did. So I am now what they now call a facilitative mediator. where you do put your 2 bobs worth in, where they'll say, lawyers, come here. And they take the lawyers, you know that's not going to work. It's time. Or they might say to the parties, I've been talking to your lawyer and I think what you're wanting is extremely ambitious. Like, that's code for, are you mad? You're never going to get that. So facilitative mediators, given that I was one, would be like a lawyer type, but you couldn't have a social worker. They would probably be doing what they call the pure mediation, where they don't get involved.
So I've read that there's another type called evaluative. So there's facilitative and evaluative mediations.
What's the evaluative? I don't know that one.
I think that's one where they basically just summarize what you've both said and tried to evaluate the situation. It's like, I think it's the more of the sit back and let you guys figure it out yourselves, but kind of lead the discussion. So I guess when it comes to those 2 different types of mediation styles, is that listed anywhere on people's websites, what style they have?
No.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, no, because the pure mediation model does not involve putting any point of view forward. But why would you pay so much for a retired judge if they weren't going to be able to use their experience and expertise to help you, Right. So, look, when we did the training, everyone did the training, we all trained them the modest way, the stepping back way. But soon we found we needed what we call in the iron fist in the velvet glove approach, because Legal Aid has been running mediations for decades, very successfully. But they are very strong about it. There's 3 hours, I think, or 4 hours limit. And if you don't agree and you're unreasonable, you're going to lose your funding. And that made people sit up and, I won't get legal aid if I don't sort of try and settle. And they've been doing that for decades.
So can you rely on a mediator then to tell you if you've got a good deal?
I think that would be a mistake. I think that's up to your lawyer to assess.
What if you don't have a lawyer and you've got a judge or a lawyer mediator? Can you ask them if what they're being offered is a good deal?
No.
Okay.
No, you can't. All you can do in that situation is say, look, I appreciate you'd love me to sign this today, but I'm self-represented at the moment. I want to take this to a lawyer to have it assessed before I put my name on it. So please don't be bullied into signing something that you don't understand.
If the mediator's rushing the process and just wants you to get a deal done, you don't have to do that. You can pull back and say, I'd like some more time to think about this. And are there any particular mediators that usually do that rushing? It's not usually the free services, is it?
Well, look, I think, and I've been out of, I think the last mediation I attended as a solicitor was a few years ago now. But I think in the early stages where there weren't many matters going to mediation was as rare back then, 10, 20 years ago, as arbitration is now, right? It just wasn't a real thing. And I've had mediators who kept us all there starving 6 or 7 o'clock at night to get the agreement. But now there's so many matters to mediate. You won't find that level of whether it was dedication or whether it was just determination, but it was often the mediator's determination,
Right.
And I have had to say sometimes, look, it's late. My client's smoker and they're desperate for a cigarette, so we'll have to just leave it here.
Really, the way I think of it, and look, I've been through my fair share of mediations as well, and I've been in front of judges' mediations, I've been in front of expert mediations, private mediations, you name it, I've done them all, unfortunately.
You've even done the ones in court.
Yes, but when you sit, it feels to me like, and I think this is the best analogy I can think of if anyone's trying to choose a mediator. You're in a boat in the middle of the ocean and it's you, your ex, and the mediator. So choose someone who you're going to want to sit in a boat with in the middle of the ocean, because you're all going to be paddling in different directions for a while and you've got to try and figure out which direction you're going to paddle. And you could be stuck in that boat for decades or, so choose a mediator that you think would be able to help you guys paddle in the right direction, or you're going to be stuck in that ocean forever. That's really how I feel about it. And you do not want to choose someone that you don't like. You don't want to choose someone that you want to be stuck in an ocean with. I mean, it's bad enough you're stuck there with your ex. Mum, I think we've covered really, choosing mediator. Go and do some Google reviews. Unfortunately, unless you're a lawyer and you've got a bottom of the barrel list and a top of the barrel list, go and maybe ask some lawyers if they could recommend one.
You could ring the Law Society in your state. They have a list of mediators, or ring the Bar Association in your state. They have a list of mediators. And you can also look up on the Attorney General's website. But all of those things are quite neutral. They don't give any opinions.
When you're looking for red flags and what to watch out for, go and do some Google reviews. Go and have a look if these people's names are aligned with any particular parenting group or any other things that you might be worried about. Just check that they're not aligned with anything. If your ex is pushing you for one particular mediator, mum said it's okay for you to say, I'd rather us choose one together where I give you a panel of 3 and you choose one, or you give me a panel of 3 and I choose one. At least makes it a little bit more fair.
Yes, what I would do, if you got a letter pushing someone and you are suspicious about that, don't write back and say, oh, no, I think we should send a panel. Write back and say, I don't think that person's a good fit for us. Here are 3. Would you please choose one? That way, within like a week, you've given another option. So they can't wave their initial letter around and say, they wouldn't go to mediation.
Yes. Okay. And mum's not your lawyer, so please get legal advice before you do any of this. There are options if cost is a barrier. We've talked about if your ex is trying to force you to pay for an expensive one and you can't afford one, you can offer those cheaper options. A mediator may or may not be a lawyer, and it really depends on what you need for your mediation, the type of personality that you have. Mum, if you've got a high conflict ex, what type of mediator are they better to go for?
Yeah, I think a powerful and confident mediator, usually someone with years of experience. And if you're going to be stuck in a high conflict with a high conflict person, one of the tactics I would think of to use is only book a morning. So it's just going to be 4 hours. Whatever we don't sort out by then, it's done. And that way you're not going to be fighting all the little bits.
Yeah.
And try and get your big things dealt with first.
Manipulative and controlling, what type of lawyer would you go for? Or would you just try and go for the free one for a bit just to see how it all goes out first?
I think so. If you're going to have a paid one, again, don't go for too expensive if they're manipulative and controlling, and try and book just a morning. People forget you don't have to go all day.
Okay. Avoid it. What type of mediation would you go for?
Video, and gentle.
Yeah.
A gentle person.
So maybe like Relationships Australia kind of
if they'll do that by video.
One.
A gentle one, because it might not be that you're actually in dispute. It might be just nailing them down to an answer.
And amicable, either or?
You might not need one. Yeah. Some people think you have to go to mediation. If you are not fighting over the kids and you've got a little parenting plan going or no plan, and if you think you agree to the consent orders, well, you can sort of do your own consent orders from the course. So with amicable, you don't have to go to mediation.
Maybe we should have said that at the start. Some amicable listeners will be going, why did I listen to this whole episode? But so look, and we've also talked about the different types of facilitative versus evaluative and, judges, lawyers, those mediators, those types. And we've talked about free and private as well. So consider those options. Go and give them a call. Find out what their wait lists are like. And, cost does matter. This might not be your only mediation. Like I said, I've been to a fair few, and we know a lot of people who go to more than one. So don't think this is the be-all and end-all, or you have to use the same mediator each time, okay?
Well, there's a push to do that though, Laura. So if you give in and to go to one you don't like or don't want, you may be forced to go back because the court or your ex may view that as a cumulative thing. Just say, yeah.
That's good to know. All right. And then aside from that, you go to court if it doesn't work, and they will send you to mediation anyway, a court-appointed mediation sometimes as well. Unfortunately, there's no avoiding mediation. And for people, our listeners who are going through DV, we are going to be working hard to try and have an option for you guys so you don't miss out on the powers of mediation, because it can really save you from going to court if you get the right mediator at the right time with the right information all around the table or in separate rooms and get that agreement. That's what we hope for you. Good luck to everyone. We have so many episodes on mediation that you can go listen to on what happens in the process. If you'd like to do our course, you can go on our wait list. We take you through how to prepare for mediation, what you need to do in mediation, what to expect, and how to get the best outcome from your mediation, and also what to do once you get an agreement. You can do all that in our course as well. Thank you, Mum, so much for your time today. Anything you want to embroider on a cushion?
No pressure.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Says you. Mediation. You're kidding yourself. Mum, I'm sorry. This is the difference between a lawyer and someone who's been through it. And I know you've been through it, but gosh, mediation, there's so much pressure. But what you're trying to say, Mum, is don't put pressure on yourself about it because...
Well, don't let them.
Don't let them.
If they're putting the pressure on you, remember you hold the cards. And you can always say, not now, I'll think about it.
Yeah.
And keep your door open. Because we do hear from people, Laura, who literally say they were bullied into an agreement.
Yeah, that's right. You don't have to agree in mediation just because they say you have to. All right. Thank you, Mum, for your time. Good luck, everyone, finding those mediators. Let us know in the comments if you got any good suggestions of mediator. Let us know in the comments if we've annoyed you. Hopefully we won't get any angry emails again from mediators, but let us know how you found your mediator. Don't let us know who it is, but, what strategies have you used? Thanks, Mum, for your time, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye-bye, Laura. I hope they like and share this YouTube. Bye, darling. Bye, everyone.
Okay. Bye. If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review, and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.